So, after a month of promising I would give you guys an animated Batman movie review, what do I plan on reviewing for you guys? An animated Batman movie I already reviewed way back in 2011. Now, there's a very simple explanation to why I did this, and it's fuck you. It's my channel, I can do whatever I want. Suck it. Well, okay, in fairness, I have to say that, yeah, I did review Batman Mask of the Phantasm way back in 2011 when I did my first Bat Month for Arkham City. And to be honest, looking back at that review, I don't think it's as good as I could have made it. Not to say that my reviews now were anything spectacular or amazing or at all great. I do have a lot of things to really fix with my current reviews now, but looking back at the reviews that I did way back when I first started to even review movies on this channel, and comparing them to what I do now, I definitely looked at my review of Batman Mask of Phantasm, as one of the films that I really wanted to re-review sometime down the line. There's going to be many other movies that I will re-review down the line because either my opinion may have changed on that said movie, or I just want to talk a little bit more about the movie, or there's something I missed in my first review, or I just didn't review it the way that I wanted to review it when I first, reviewed it. And Batman Mask of Phantasm is just one of those. I mean, this is personally one of my all-time favorite Batman movies, and I wanted to give it a little bit more of a better review because I think this movie is so good that it kind of deserves that from me. So that's why not only I will be re-reviewing this movie, but I'll be reviewing a number of other movies sometime down the line. So yeah, let's just get started with the review. And just to put it bluntly, I'm not saying this just to make a very controversial comment or just to cause controversy in the comments or whatever, but this may very well be my favorite Batman movie just of all time. Not my favorite just animated movie, not my favorite anime movie. It's just probably my favorite Batman movie of all time. Now, don't quote me on that. I'm saying probably is my favorite Batman movie. I'm not saying it's definitely my favorite Batman movie. I'm not saying it's the greatest Batman movie I've ever seen in my life. I'm saying it's probably. It's without a doubt in my mind one of the best. That's without a doubt in my mind, this is one of the best Batman movies I've ever seen in my entire life, both animated or live action or whatever. But it's probably. It's not one of my favorite. It's definitely one of my favorites, just not my absolute favorite. But it may very well be because as much as I like the Burton movies, the Nolan movies, this one I think just captures Batman in the perfect light. And I think that can be said about Batman the Animated Series, that being my favorite iteration of Batman, that and the Arkham games, because it's just the animated series and this movie that captured Batman so perfectly in every way, shape, and form. And that's because you got great people like Bruce Timm and Paul Dini working on these movies, working on this animated movie as well as the animated series. I mean, if there's any bigger Batman fan out there besides me, it's those two guys. When it comes towards writing Batman, they fucking know Batman. Okay, they write Batman perfectly. They write the stories that make you think that's a good Batman story. I mean, a lot of the other writers who write for Batman movies or animated movies, they write admittedly good stories, but those two write great Batman stories. There's a big difference between the two. Like Nolan, he writes great stories with Batman in them, but he doesn't write great Batman stories. And I know some people may be saying, well, if this is your favorite Batman movie ever, then why aren't the Nolan movies? And, I know I'm derailing a little bit, but that's just part of my reviews. I do go off on a tangent on some parts, but, the Nolan movies I love, okay? I've said that before, I'll say it again. I love the Dark Knight trilogy Nolan Batman movies, okay? I love them. I'll defend even Dark Knight Rises I like, and I'll defend that movie till my dying breath, and even then I'll probably still defend it in the afterlife. But, those movies, I think, what keep them from being my favorite Batman movies of all time is the fact that they take away a lot of the fun of not only watching a Batman movie, but watching a comic book movie. I don't view those movies as great comic book movies. I view those movies as just great films that just so happen to have Batman in them. Because they're not really dealing with really comic book, silly stuff going on. They really deal with kind of like real world situations. Like, oh, hey, Joker, terrorism. That's something that actually kind of plagues real life today. I thank you for reminding me about that, Christopher Nolan. I go to see a comic book movie to get away from my everyday problems, but you're reintroducing an everyday problem that some people actually have to put up with. So, thanks for that. I mean, I love them. I mean, the main reason what keeps me from enjoying them fully is the main reason why I love them because it just did so many different things. They push the envelope for what you can actually do with a comic book movie, and that's the reason why I love this film so much. But in that process, they both, I think sort of alienated a lot of Batman fans and really took away the pleasure and fun of watching a comic book movie, even to the point where now every single comic book movie has to be dark and gritty, and the color palette has to be just grays, even though they're wearing these really bright costumes and everything. It's like that's not really adult. It's just making everything look harsh and gritty, and it doesn't make anything adult. Being smart is kind of, quote Doug Walker, being smart is actually more adult than just making everything look dark and gritty. It just makes everything look too. In the task of making it too realistic, they make it look very unrealistic. Like that's not actually how something it's in today's times really looks or anything. I mean, I love Man of Steel, but that's one of my biggest issues with that movie. It's like, why make Superman realistic? The whole reason why we love Superman, read Superman comic books, and watch Superman movies is to just be taken away from real life and just have fun and believe a man can fly. But when you make that realistic, it just ruins the entire point of the character. But again, going off track. But back to Batman: Master of Phantasm. Yeah, I'm actually still talking about this movie. Yeah, this is probably my favorite Batman movie of all time. I mean, if you really want to know how much I love this movie, I still own the fucking VHS tape of the movie. I mean, yeah, that's why I got the VHS tape over here, just for this movie specifically. I've yet to get it on DVD or even Blu-ray, so that says a lot. But I fucking love this movie. Every time I watch it, I think it gets better and better. And I think what I admire about the movie the most is that at the time that film came out in December, Christmas Day actually of 1993, this was the first Batman movie that was actually about Batman. I mean, again, I love the Tim Burton Batman movies, but those movies, and even the Schumacher movies too, were never about Batman. They were always about the villains and not really Batman himself. And I know that some people may enjoy that because, oh, well, that, some people may argue that, well, that fits Batman's character really well. I mean, he's always dark in the shadows, so it makes sense why you wouldn't really know too much about him. But I want to know about the main character. I mean, if his name's in the friggin' title of the movie, I want to know about the character, okay? And Tim Burton didn't do that as a style, as a, creative choice, like, oh, that's what he saw the character of Batman do. He said himself that he never found Batman as an interesting character, so that's why he always focused more on the villains instead of Batman himself, which I thought was really biased and kind of selfish reason to really, cram him in the background, let all the villains be in the forefront. But I admire this film the most because this movie was actually the first Batman film of its time to be actually about Batman. It was the Batman Begins before Batman Begins, where it actually sort of chronicles Bruce Wayne's journey of becoming Batman. Exempting how he got trained and where he got all his gadgets and everything, but really going into what made him want to, fight crime and really what made him want to, become Batman and everything. And this is an animated movie. That's what really makes me admire it the most. Now, this is the first Batman movie to really be about Batman, but it was the fucking animated movie that did it first instead of the live action films made in Hollywood, written by Hollywood writers and big time Hollywood actors. It was the animated movie that got that right first. The fucking movie for little kids, the one with the PG rating, not the PG-13 rating like all the other live action movies. The fucking animated movie got that right. That's what really makes me admire this the most. And this came off of the heels and success of the animated series, so that kind of surprised me why the movie bombed big time. I mean, this movie is kind of notorious with comic book movies as one of the biggest comic book film bombs of all time. The movie had a budget of about $6 million, I believe, and it made back like 5,600,000 something. So it bombed pretty damn hard, and that's really because Warner Brothers at first was planning to release this on, I think, like video, but they decided to, at the very last minute, to release it in theaters for some certain reason. So that kind of explains why the movie, sort of bombed. There wasn't really too much marketing behind this movie, which really sucks because I think it's actually better than majority of the live action movies that we've gotten. I think it's actually better than even the majority of some of the animated movies that we've gotten. I mean, if this is my favorite Batman movie, then Under the Red Hood is without a doubt like a close second. But again, going off track, it's great. I mean, the first Batman movie to actually be about Batman was the animated movie. That says something. Something sad, but you know, it says something. And it just baffles the shit out of me that we don't have animated movies like this being released nowadays. I mean, Adam Sandler can release this newest shit bomb movie, Blended, but Batman Under the Red Hood or Son of Batman can't get released in theaters. Well, I can understand why that second one can get released in theaters, but you know, like a good Batman animated movie can get in the theaters, but like I mentioned, shit like Adam Sandler movies can. It's just like, what the fuck, really? It's really because it's animated. Like I bet you if this movie was made in live action and had a little bit more marketing to it, it would have had its audience. It really would have gotten a lot of money in. I think you know it was critically praised at the time. Like critics loved this movie, it just wasn't really a big audience hit. And again, it wasn't a commercial success. But I'm telling you, if it was a live action then an animation, people would have saw it and people would have loved it. I mean, it's just something about animation that turns a lot of people off, mostly adults, because they think, oh, it's in animated form, I guess it's for kids, when that doesn't say shit, okay? Look at something like South Park, that's animated, but it sure as hell ain't for kids, or Family Guy, or The Simpsons, or well, Simpsons kind of for kids, but, you know, I digress. Like, just because it's in animated form doesn't mean you should just, you know, dismiss it on, you know, arrival, just because it's animated. It doesn't mean shit, okay? It's the actual, what's there, the story, the characters, and everything. Again, Young Justice was another one of those things. Why it got canceled, I don't know, because it was animated and they thought it was for kids when really it wasn't for kids. Same thing with Green Lantern and all that other stuff. But again, going way off track. But let's talk actually about the movie. Now, the movie centers around, again, like I mentioned, Batman and fighting the Phantasm and the title. Okay, well, the movie is pretty much just about Batman, and Batman is being framed for murders of various mob bosses, and he's being framed by this new mysterious figure called the Phantasm, although he's not named that in the actual film itself. And throughout the course of the film, we learn about various different moments in Bruce Wayne's earlier life of how he wanted to become Batman, why he wanted to become Batman, and again, you know, first Batman movie to actually be about Batman in live action, in, you know, theatrical format. Um, and where was I going with this? I think what I like the most about the movie is again the actual story, it being actually about Batman and the characters. You know, Bruce Wayne is of course great, you know, as usual with Kevin Conroy voicing Bruce Wayne. Again, my favorite Batman of all time. Not even gonna um, continue on about that. But one thing I can say about this movie with regarding to characters is that the inclusion of the Joker in the movie. Now, usually, whenever the Joker is put into any Batman movie, he's really crowbarred into the movie. Like, oh, hey, he's the biggest Batman villain of all time. He's the most popular Batman villain. Throw him into this movie because, you know, sell tickets or whatever. And he was put into this movie, but they actually do have a really good way of including him in here, which it kind of gives away his, you know, origin. Well, not really. It kind of gives away who the Joker was before he became the Joker, but it never really blatantly gives everything away. Because the best part about the Joker is the fact that you don't know his story. You don't know who he really was, or, you know, if he was just some guy who, you know, was normal, then went crazy one day, or some guy who was really crazy and then just, you know, went even crazier as a Joker. But here they actually do include him in the movie in a really creative way. It turns out that, well, in the movie, the Phantasm is knocking off mob bosses, and it turns out that the Joker, before he became the Joker, was actually a mob informant, or he worked for the mob or whatever, and the Phantasm is coming after him. So I thought that was a great way of including the Joker in the movie. I mean, again, most Batman movies will just have him in there, just to have him in there, like, even out Batman movies, even like Batman Arkham Origins, it was just kind of like it was a good Joker story, admittedly, but it was just you didn't really need to have him in there. You could just toss him aside and had him in a smaller role, which could have gotten rid of him completely. But they include the Joker in here in a great way. And again, he's voiced by Mark Hamill, my personal favorite Joker, and I don't think I've ever explained why Mark Hamill is always my favorite Joker, but I'm going to explain that here right now. The reason why Mark Hamill is my favorite Joker is because he's so good in this role that he actually stands toe-to-toe with all of the other live-action Jokers. You know, Cesar Romero, Jack Nicholson, even Heath Ledger. And when you really step back and you think about that the guy who's just doing a voice for a Saturday morning cartoon is just as good as a live action actor, you really gotta stand back and think to yourself, that means he's probably the best. I mean, if he's just doing a voice for a stupid Saturday morning cartoon, and he's able to stand, toe to toe with all the other big giants who have played the Joker in live action, he must be the best Joker out of all of them. I mean, that's just my personal look and take on it. I mean, his voice is just so fucking iconic as the Joker that to the point where any comic I read that has a Joker in it, I immediately just think of that voice. Same thing with Kevin Conroy's Batman. Any Batman comic I read, I just think of his voice whenever I'm reading the lines that he's saying in the book. And he does a great job here, and again, he's included in the film very, very well. And the Phantasm was just a made-up character for the movie, a villain that was made up for, just exclusively for the movie. And I gotta say, I'm kind of disappointed that he's only been exclusively shown in this movie and, one episode of Justice League Unlimited, which was really a Batman Beyond episode, the episode titled Epilogue. But, again, going off track, I'm kind of surprised that he wasn't really featured in any other Batman media. I mean, no other comic books. Well, maybe a couple comic books, but really nothing else. I would love to see this character be brought back in some way, shape, or form. Maybe as a villain in the upcoming Batman game. Maybe in a future animated movie that's kind of a sequel to this. But I don't know. I was really a big fan of Phantasm in this movie, and kind of surprised that he's never showed up in any other Batman form yet. So that kind of disappointed me. As to who the actual Phantasm is, I am going to give that away. It's kind of, that's one of my big problems with this movie is they give a lot of red herrings to sort of, take you off the track of who actually is the Phantasm, but to actually who it turned out to be isn't really all that surprising once you do find out this person's backstory. The person that is the Phantasm is actually the love interest in the movie, Andrea Beaumont, voiced by Dana Delaney, who actually was so good in this movie, she actually went on later to voice Lois Lane in Superman the Animated Series. And when you actually hear her in this movie, you can actually, hear Lois Lane almost coming out of that. I mean, she's sassy, she's witty, she has to come back to almost anything. She even fucking burns Batman's ass in one scene. I'm not gonna give away what the actual line is, mostly because I can't remember what the actual line is, but she pretty much just fucking burns him right then and there, and actually walks away to live to tell a tale. I mean, that's fucking awesome. But again, it's kind of obvious as to who the Phantasm is once you find out her backstory, that her dad actually was sort of murdered by the mob bosses, so that's why she wants to go and pick off all the mob bosses in Gotham City. The only thing that's kind of weird is that there's a lot of moments where it doesn't make any sense how she is a Phantasm. Like the first scene that we see the Phantasm, it's in Gotham, but then the next scene that we see with Andrea Beaumont, she's still in a plane flying to Gotham. Like, how did she get there? Did she have someone else dressed up as the Phantasm? Did she have someone dressed up as her, and that's her in the plane? It's really weird. There's a lot of moments in that movie that are kind of weird, a big animation, or just, written, plot hole error or whatever. It's just moments like that in the movie that kind of upset me, and just make you go, wait, what? I have no idea what's going on. And honestly, that about does it for my review of Batman, my re-review of Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Just everything in it I thought was great. For it to be the first Batman movie actually about Batman, and to be an animated Batman movie, I find both really, really admiring and both very, very sad, but it still is probably my favorite Batman movie of all time. I can't really exaggerate when I'm saying that. Now, again, probably. I'm not saying it is, I'm not saying it isn't, but it definitely is one of my favorites, and may very well be my favorite Batman movie of all time. And I don't care if it's animated, okay? It's just as good, if not better, than most of the live-action Batman movies. Again, Bruce Timm and Paul Dini know how to write Batman, so of course this captures Batman in a perfect light for me. And also, the movie was really rushed. Like again, they actually decided to rush. They actually decided to have this movie released theatrically in theaters at the very last minute, but they had to really rush this movie out into theaters since they did that, which is surprising as all hell, because the animation in this movie is actually better than the actual animated series, which again says a lot because the movie was really rushed into production and rushed into the theaters. The animation is great. Some of the best animation I've seen in any given animated movie ever. It's just downright beautiful looking. And also the music in the movie. Shirley Walker could actually compose, the late Shirley Walker composed the music for this movie. And how many animated movies, or hell, she even did the score for the animated series. How many animated movies or animated series can you think of that actually have a fully what's the word? Actually, a fully put together orchestra in it. Like the main title is just the Batman animated series theme done with an orchestra. Like how many animated, made for kids movies or TV shows can you actually think that actually pull that off beautifully? Um, I mean, I would say that, given how much I praise the animation, I would say that you can just turn the sound off and love it, but I don't turn the sound off because the sound is just as good as the animation, if not better. The music is great, voice acting is great, the story is great. It's just simply a great movie. And even though I have a few gripes about the movie, still at the end of the day, I can't give this film anything lower than a 10 out of 10. It personally is my favorite, probably my favorite Batman film of all time. Just right up there with the best. I actually like it more than Dark Knight, so that says a lot. So I absolutely recommend this film to any big Batman fan. It really is a shame that it made barely any of its money back. It only made its money back when it was released later on the video and everything. And I'm glad that it made its money back eventually, but I'm really upset that it sort of bombed the box office. I really hoped that, looking back at this movie, I really had hoped that it would have really, really sort of paved the way for animated, comic book films to make the screen, but apparently we're only getting live action movies, and for some reason or another, even though those big Hollywood comic book movies are, being made, they're somehow still don't live up to animated greats like this one, Batman, That's Good Phantasm. Probably my favorite Batman movie of all time, but without a doubt, one of my favorite Batman films of all time, so that's all I gotta say about it. 10 out of 10, perfect movie in my opinion, with some minor flaws, but still great overall. So, yeah, I reviewed this Batman movie because we have a new Batman animated movie that's already out, Son of Batman. I guess I'll review that next.